Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Happy Tuesday, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. For those of you who are here for the first time, welcome. My show is about celebrating artists and their body of worth. What makes a great artist? How do they get from point A to point B and beyond? I hope you enjoyed today's show, and if you're not already, I hope that you'll subscribe. We have a lot of great artists coming up from all walks of life that we're going to be celebrating. And hit the like button. Tell your friends, and it's a gorgeous day outside. Grab your iPhone, go and sit outside and spend an hour with Nancy McGraw and myself. Full confession, I have been in love with Nancy McGraw, sorry, Steve, since the first time that I saw her on stage. She has one of those incredible silky voices that just hits you right here when you hear her sing. And she's also a Southern woman. And me being from the South, I love Southern women. Before we jump into celebrating you and your past, I want to acknowledge where we are today. Today marks, sorry folks, 402 days since our theaters shut down. And that, of course, means cabaret rooms, concert halls, performing arts arenas all across the country. And before we look back, Nancy, I want to ask, how are you doing now, really, in the midst of all this?
I feel very fortunate. There were some things we missed, this time last year. Mm-hmm. Great plans we had that fell through. But all in all, it's been, I feel very fortunate.
That's great. And have you been able to work on your art over the past year, either writing or do you sing around the house? How do you keep your art flowing at this time?
I sing some, not as much as I should. And then something will come up and I go, oh, here we go, because you got to keep those muscles strong. And it does take discipline when the long road ahead, you don't know what's going to be there.
Now, I want to go back to the very beginning. You were born in Atlanta, but if the notes that I've read are correct, when you were 2 years old, your family moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, I say 2 weeks old because Carol Channing was born in Seattle, Washington. And when she was 2.5 weeks old, her family moved to San Francisco. She said something that everyone should experience at 2 weeks old. So I want to know what Charlotte was like for you as a little girl growing up there.
I think it was the perfect place to have a family. We moved there from my father's business. He was in the textile business and traveled a lot all over the South. Charlotte was the largest city in the two Carolinas. I know, it was larger than Conway, South
That's
Carolina.
Right, my hometown.
But it's you would not recognize it. I wouldn't recognize it from where we grew up. It was a wonderful neighborhood. It was very safe, but very homogenous, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. It was. I'm glad that I went to high school there, and I'm glad I left.
Now, I want to talk about the household that you grew up in. Your father traveled a lot, but did you have arts in your home? Were you a TV family or a music family? Did you go to see shows in Charlotte? What was the situation for you?
I think a lot of people are really influenced by their parents' choice of music, what they bring into the house. And my father was a big fan of the big bands and singers. And one of our family stories, he danced with Dinah Shore at Vanderbilt University. So we named our dog Dinah. I remember when we first started bringing in rock and roll records, and my father pulled out his Benny Goodman box CD and said, "Nancy, this is good music."
He wasn't kidding.
He wasn't kidding.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are really heavily influenced by what their parents loved, and wanting to please him. I listened to a lot of his favorites.
Mm-hmm.
He brought home, I think it was 1954, he brought home Rosemary Clooney's album, The Blue Rose. It
Wow.
was all Duke Ellington.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he played that over and over again. And I remember just loving it so much. And later on, being able to meet her when I produced the MAC Awards.
Mm-hmm.
And we gave her the Lifetime Achievement Award. That was a thrill. And I
remember that night vividly.
Yeah, I wish my father had known, that I had that connection.
Well, I have to ask, we'll get there a little later, but was your father a fan of the Boswell sisters? There's a reason I ask.
Yeah, he remembered them. It was a little before his time. Not really, but he did remember them. And that was, when I played Connie Boswell, that was a thrill for him. He loved that music. Yeah.
Now, when did you first realize that you had this gift, that you could sing?
My kindergarten teacher told my mother that I would sing a lot, and the kids would cut out a TV so that I could be on TV in kindergarten. Mm-hmm. My first solo was first grade. I sang What Child Is This with the orchestra in the Christmas concert at school. I don't remember not singing. My sisters and I harmonized and sang together.
I remember reading that there were two teachers, I think, in high school that were very specific in terms of getting you involved in the school plays. Can you take us back to that and how that unfolded?
Right. High school, we always did a musical, and the first was Carousel. The choir director and the director of that musical and the speech teacher had gone to Northwestern for their master's degrees. So sophomore year, it was Carrie Pittridge and Carousel. Junior year, Annie and Annie Get Your Gun. Senior year, Nellie Forbush in South Pacific. So that was all I knew that I wanted to do.
Is there a pivotal moment for you, Nancy, where you did say, "This is it. This is what I want to pursue"?
It may have been as late as high school, or it may have been. I had a folk singing trio, and I just loved that. Loved doing that. I played the guitar, and we sang for the Dairy Association and things like that. It may have been then.
Did you have opportunities beyond high school? You were performing with this group, but were there a lot of performing opportunities for you as an actress outside of high school?
No. And when I went to college, I didn't realize you could study acting. In retrospect, I at that time, Northwestern, I would have been better off not having a conservatory background like I had in the School of Music at Northwestern. I would have been in the School of Speech, where a lot of my friends were. But there was a good bit of crossover, and I could take acting classes there, but not growing up in Charlotte. There was a woman who had an children's acting group, and her name was Connie Cottentop.
I love that.
And I wanted so much to audition for Connie Cottentop, but my mother said no. She didn't want me to do that. Just wanted me to play the piano, and singing was okay, but not Connie.
Well, what was the reaction when you told your parents that you wanted to be an actress, that you wanted to pursue this as a career?
My mother always quoted Charlton Heston. And he would say, an actor drinks disappointment with their morning coffee. And that was pretty much her attitude. And my father said, it's not going to make you happy, but do it if you want, you know.
Well, I think that's great advice from both of them and Charlton Heston. I've never heard that quote before. I think it's so apropos, especially now.
It's so true.
So you had
cup after cup after cup. I drink
after cup after cup after cup
right.
after cup after cup. So you go to college, and then how did you make the move to New York?
Ah, yes. After college, I moved downtown to Chicago with some sorority sisters, and I got my equity card in a dinner theater doing Fiddler on the Roof, and then auditioned for Godspell, and it was the Chicago company of Godspell. At that time, it was a major hit off Broadway, and they were doing companies in Boston, and it was Chicago. So I auditioned for that, and that was a 9-month run. And after that, I did the national tour of Godspell.
Now, did you like being on the road?
I loved it. I really loved it. It was a way of life. That was a full year on the road, but we played major cities. And at that time I was singing Day by Day, and it was a big old hit on the radio.
Of course, yes.
And so it was a thrill. It was lonely. I would get lonely sometimes.
And was your mind already made up that you were going to make the move to New York, or was that just a small seed in the back of your head?
By that time I had friends in New York, you know, and people I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt more comfortable that I could come here. One of my friends in Godspell, Ricky Verretta, had an apartment he wanted me to share. So I did that. I made the move and did the Promenade Theater, Godspell at the Promenade Theater. My friend Ricky was Steve's bartender after we got off the road of Godspell. Mm-hmm. So he introduced me to my future husband.
To your future husband. And how many years ago was that?
Okay. Do the math. That is 77, 1970.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's the secret for you and Steve, if you don't mind my asking? I mean, number one, this is a very tough business. No matter what side of the footlights you're on. Talk about that disappointment once again. But I want to know, number one, what the secret is for the two of you. Like with any couple, I'm sure you've had your moments. But you stick together and you go through this together. And
We
God
do.
bless the fact that you have each other.
It's easier now than it was when we worked together. I think there was some friction there. Now we're just great friends.
That's wonderful.
No, not just great friends, but it helps. And
it does help. Trust me, it helps.
You know, with Danny.
Yes, I know. I've been very, very fortunate.
It's all compromised too.
So when you came to New York, had you been to New York to visit before, or did you just make the plunge and come here?
As a child, we came to New York a few times. My grandparents brought me when I was 10 years old, and that was the first trip to New York. And then I remember came with my parents, and I remember walking down Broadway, and this is not a happy memory. Walking down Broadway, and
I don't mean to make you cry.
No, I won't cry. We passed Funny Girl, the marquee, and there were 5 of us. And my father said, "Do you saw my mother's face?" And it was kind of like I could see she didn't want to do that. And I said, "Oh no, Daddy, that's okay."
Do you know why she didn't want to see the show?
It may have just been spending the money. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
It may have been that simple. I don't know. A ticket might have been $9.
So when you made the move to New York, when you first got here, and do you have memories of your first day in New York? As a resident now.
I can't say that it's a specific day.
Mm-hmm.
I working at the Promenade. That was my first few months in New York. I remember looking for an apartment, and I was told, don't live between Amsterdam and Broadway. That block, you don't want that block.
Now, I want to put things in perspective. This is the late 70s.
Right.
Which is when I came to New York.
Right.
And as I've said in my own show, that I had visions of Breakfast at Tiffany's and Sunday in New York and all those wonderful frothy shows, comedies from the 60s and 70s. But when I arrived in New York, the reality was Midnight Cowboy, Taxi Driver. It was a very seedy city to come to. Were your parents nervous for you being in New York as a young woman at that time?
They probably were, but they gave me free rein. They really did. You know, they didn't express that to me, that they were afraid to make me afraid. You know, when my first apartment was the fifth floor of a walk-up on 77th Street, great block between West End Avenue and Riverside Drive. And I had this kind of muggette. This fella tried to mug me, and he was coming down from the 5th floor. I was going up, and he had like a box cutter kind of thing. And he said, "Give me your money." And I said, "I don't have any money. I just cashed my $95 unemployment check." So it was in my Halston bag, which I'd bought on the road. And anyway, I talked him out of it. And I said, "If you leave right now, I won't call the police." But I did call the police, and the policeman said, "You know what? You shouldn't be living here by yourself on the 5th floor of a brownstone."
Now, did you have roommates at the time, or were you living?
Not then. I was by myself.
You were by yourself.
Yeah.
So how did you, first of all, get started as far as an actress in New York? Obviously, you said you had friends here. How did you learn the ropes of what you have to do as a young actress?
I think classes, more than anything, I think classes teach you the ropes. You're with other people who are struggling and trying, and you hear about what you do at an audition or what's coming up. And Michael Shurtleff was a casting director who I was in his class for a long time, and wrote great books on acting. How to audition. Great books. That class, later on, it was Larry Moss's class, but being around other people who are just getting started, you know.
And it's always great. I remember, I call them those hunger years, when you're first struggling to establish yourself in the city. Looking back on it, I tend to look back with a little bit of a romanticism for that time, which was not as romantic as I want to remember it being at the time.
Right. No, we have rose-colored glasses on the past. Looking back, everything's a little easier.
Now, do you consider, I know that you got cast as Connie Boswell in the Boswell Sisters. This was an off-Broadway show that you were doing. And do you consider that your first big break in New York?
It led to other things. And the reason I was in that show was a college friend who wrote it. You know, it was a connection. And that show led to 9, basically, because Memory in a Rarity was one of my Boswell sisters, and Audrey Levine was the others. But Memory's husband, you know, Memory's husband, Tom Kelly, was Tommy Toon's stage manager for A Day in Hollywood, A Night in the Ukraine on Broadway. So they were looking for a replacement right after the Heebie Jeebies. That was the Boswell show, the Heebie Jeebies. Heebie Jeebie closed that summer, and Tom Kelly wanted me to audition for A Day in Hollywood. So he arranged an audition for me with Tommy Toon. So that Boswell Sister show led to that. I didn't get A Day in Hollywood, but Tommy said, "I'm casting a Broadway show, and I want you to come in and sing for Maury Yeston, the composer, which I did, which led to 9. So it's like, okay, so my college friend wrote the Boswells. The Boswells, I met Tommy Toon's stage manager, auditioned for Tommy Toon, and had a nice run in 9. So one thing leads to another. You know?
Well, I want to go back for just a moment. When you're doing a show and you're asked to audition, as a successful show, and you're asked to audition for something, obviously it must be a lot easier for you because you don't have that I have to get this job mentality going on. But did you enjoy auditioning? Was that a good thing for you?
No, I wish I did. The people, my friends who have really had major careers, enjoy auditioning. I can't say that I do. It's not, my personality isn't attuned to that. And I think it's so important that you do, that you consider it. You know, I would tell other people, if you consider it an opportunity, you know, to use your craft. But when I was auditioning, I never got to that space. And that's essential for a healthy time, so that you know, it's just one after another. A friend of ours, Bruce McGill, auditioned before he did like 150 major motion pictures, he would audition, and he never took it personally. And that's why he was a great success. Just, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just not what they need at this moment. It's all those things, you know, and successful people learn that.
Well, some people are able to accept that. Some people are not able to accept it. But it is the reality of this business. For me, I always say that success boils down to one word, and the word is yes. Yes, I will cast you. Yes, I will come see your show. Yes, I will take the time to watch this podcast. Whatever it is, it all boils down to that. And the ones that I want to celebrate are the ones that are here watching this, not the ones who aren't here for whatever reasons they are. But getting cast in 9, what was the biggest impact that show made on you personally, beyond the obvious of being in a Broadway hit show?
It was quite a thrill. It's a thrilling time. I only did one Broadway show, but it was magical. Your question is, how did it affect me beyond just the day-to-day doing the show? I suppose it was the people that I carried with me after we closed. You know, the friends I made, the memories I have, the influence that certain people had on me. Raul Julia, Anita Morris, Liliane Montevecchi, they all affected me. Their work ethic, their the way they treated their family. You know, Anita and Raul set the standard so high, how you treat the people that are your family. So I walked away with all of that.
And of course, I mean, being in this business, it's all about collaboration. It's the people you work with. I always say there's no such thing as a one-person show because of all the people that surround the person who's standing in the spotlight. What is it for you personally that you love in the collaborative process? And I want to talk about in a moment some of the people that you have collaborated with over the years.
I remember being working with Tommy Walsh. Did you know Tommy?
I knew of him. I didn't know him personally.
I knew him from 9. He was Tommy Toon's associate on that show, and they won Tony Awards together. And as a friend, he directed my cabaret act several times. He instilled the need for positive thinking. he would never hear a negative thought. So it was very powerful to work with Tommy. It was a great loss.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And how long were you with Nine?
Altogether, it was almost 3 years because we had a workshop for 8 weeks. In 1981, we started a workshop. Then the money had to be raised for the Broadway show. So then there was another 5 weeks of rehearsal for Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
Broadway ran almost 2 years, and then I did the national tour after that. So it was almost 3 years with Nine.
And let's talk about the mindset of doing 8 shows a week and the discipline that takes. What was your routine like when you were doing the show?
Arriving at the theater early so that you're relaxed,
Mm-hmm.
you have plenty of time. And during the show, understudy rehearsals would take up one afternoon. The routine, a voice lesson every Monday with Paul Gavert, who was a wonderful voice teacher.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he's another one we've lost. So that was, staying vocally in touch. There were a lot of press events, so you hardly ever had any extra time, really.
And then you came back after being on the road. You're back in New York. What steps were you taking as far as your career was concerned? I know that you ran a nightclub for quite some time, but you were also, did you make a conscious choice to really go in the direction of cabaret? And again, so many incredible people that you met through cabaret. And did you meet a lot of those people because of the nightclub?
Yes, I had sung in cabaret before
Mm-hmm.
Nine, before I met Steve, when I first got to New York. I felt like I needed a plan B. And Steve asked me to manage Forbidden Broadway, the room, to manage the little room at Paulson's. While after being on the road with Nine, getting home, I took 6 weeks to quit smoking. I laid on my couch and quit smoking. And that was that.
Wow. I never knew you smoked.
I know. And here I am telling all my embarrassing secrets. Oh my God. So I told Steve, yes, I would do it for 6 months. And then it just...
Now, were you married at this point? Or?
No, we were living in sin.
Good for you.
Yeah.
I like that.
We were shacking up.
Good for
My father used to call it shacking up. So he put me to work, and I'll tell you a little secret, just a little of it. I had a diagnosis that led me to believe I needed a plan B. So that's when I really thought, okay, I'll go to work and
that was part of the reason for the stopping.
Yeah, it changed everything. So I managed the little room at Paulson's when we had Forbidden Broadway. That was such a mega hit. You couldn't get a seat if you tried. And I understudied the two women at that same time, doing both jobs. And that led into us building a larger room. And then the fella who had written the Heebie Jeebies, the Boswell story way back when, had a new revue called Forever Plaid.
Mm-hmm.
So he came to me, since he knew me, and we started working on Forever Plaid. This was after we had built the larger room and called it Steve McGraw's.
Mm-hmm.
And we started forever plaid there. Started 2 nights a week and nursing it along and building the audiences until it got produced and did an off-Broadway run and ran for 5 years there. Meanwhile, I was booking a lot of other cabaret singers and loving all of that. That was fun.
Well, I want to talk about one of them because he's a mutual friend of ours, and that's Mark Nadler. And there's something magical about you and Mark when the two of you get together and what you're able to create. Can you tell us about the evolution of that relationship and what it's like for you being on stage with this powerhouse entertainer?
People are always amazed because he's just so considerate, you know. I was sitting at the bar downstairs at Steve McGraw's one night, and this fella comes in and says, "Hi, I'm Mark Nadler, and I'm going to make you a lot of money."
The first time I saw Mark Nadler, I was at the Five Oaks. Did you ever go to the Five Oaks?
Yes.
Oh my God. And this guy comes in and he's got these glitter tennis shoes on, but that's not where it stops. They were tap shoes. And he gets up and he taps his way all the way around the room. And that was the first time I saw Mark Nadler. And I said,
unforgettable, yes.
Yes.
We were together Saturday night. Yeah. He's a wonderful director. Mm-hmm. And now he's branching out and directing more women now. I shouldn't say women, I'm sure men.
No, that's great.
But just Celia Burke he's working with, Pam Morgan. He's some other.
Well, I will tell you, Pam Morgan has an incredible show, and I was her guest star, and we were supposed to open 2 nights after everything shut down last year. It never happened. We had 3 rehearsals in the city. Mark Nadler and Pam were literally the 2 last people that I saw in Manhattan. But he is such a phenomenal entertainer. What makes him a great director?
He comes from the lyric. He won't let a moment go by that isn't honest, that isn't connected. He'll find the way. If you don't have the way for that particular lyric, you know, he studied with Charles Nelson Riley out in L.A. It was a big influence on him. So he comes from the subtext, the background that, you know, we have a mutual vocabulary, and he tailors it to your comfort. Plus his arrangements are just staggeringly beautiful. He can put 2 songs together for a show. You know, he can make a pairing. His gazinta, you know, his ability to gazinta, go from one thing to the next, to the next. He has that down.
Now, one show that I specifically remember so vividly with you was the Carol Hall review that you did at Danny's Grand Sea Palace. Your connection with Carol Hall, how did that come about? Did that come through Tommy as well?
No, it was Mark. Mark was a tremendous fan of her work and asked her if he could do a review. And he cast me and Heather McRae, Tracy Reynolds. So I didn't really know Carol. I'd seen her show at 88s and such, but I didn't know her. It was all through Mark.
Now, you mentioned earlier, you produced the Mac Awards. Have you also directed the Mac Awards? But let's talk a little.
Tommy Walsh directed. We did three Mac Awards together at Town Hall. They were the Town Hall Mac Awards because they were the only ones that were at Town Hall. And Tommy was the director and I was the producer. for those
Wow.
3.
There were
Yeah.
only 3 at Town Hall,
Yeah.
and I
Mhm.
won my first 2 MAC awards at both of those. So,
All right. All right.
so great. The first time I won, and this is the way to win anyone, I was on stage in San Francisco when I heard that I'd won. And it's great because I didn't have to make a speech. I didn't have to do any of those things. And I wasn't even thinking about it when it happened. So that's a great
Oh.
moment. But since you first got involved in MAC, and for those who don't know, and I don't think there's anyone here who doesn't know, Manhattan Association of Cabarets, a lot's changed since the beginning. Some of it good, some bad, some indifferent. What are some of the biggest changes that you've seen in the business since you've come into the world of cabaret? Things that you absolutely love, things that you still resist, and those elements that were there that are no longer there that you now miss.
Mm-hmm. I loved it when it was a $6 cover charge, $6 minimum, and you could get buffalo chicken wings for the minimum. You know, those days when you could actually afford to see just about everything and everybody you wanted to. There's cabaret it's a tough business. It's for everyone, for the club, for the performers. It's like cabaret is it's like communism. It's a beautiful idea, but there's no money in it. So still, I think for me, this is another. You are a genius at marketing, promotion, and that's essential to being a cabaret success. And you help other people with that. You encourage that. And that's another thing. You got to love it. You have to love handing out those cards. You have to love sending those emails.
Well, you know the cabaret handshake, don't you?
No, what is it?
You put your hand out and you take your hand back, and there's a card in your hand. I don't know if that will exist after COVID or not, but that's...
Oh, yeah. We got to come up with something else.
Oh, my God.
It's so true. Whether it's memorial service or whatever, you're going to come away with a card. The big rooms, I think, operate differently. They used to give a salary, Now I think they're still working on the door and you're split. The split's getting harder and harder. And I understand, I owned a club. I know it's hard. You got to pay the rent. You got to pay the Con Ed. It's hard for everybody. And there again, you love it. And building an audience, you have to have the patience to do that, because the people who come truly love that art form.
Who have to keep it going. That have inspired you along the way, both in the theater and in the world of cabaret? And I want to know those people who have made a major impact on moving you to the next step throughout your career. Obviously, there was Tommy Walsh and the work that you did together, and Tommy Tune. But who are some of the other, and Mark Nadler, who are some of the other players along the way?
People I observed, when I first got here, going back a bit, I felt like I had a real support system. I had friends who really supported what I did, and I lost a lot of them with the AIDS crisis. I lost a lot of people that were holding me up. People that I have observed that have made an impression on me in cabaret. I love Christine Ebersol's work. I love Karen Akers as a friend and an artist. Looking back, I think my favorite singer that I knew was David Carroll.
Oh, wow. Yes.
Yeah.
I remember that.
He was such a force, such a gentleman. He was just divine and had the most heart-touching sound. he was delightful to work with at the club. People like that have made a big impression on me. Nancy Lamont was a friend and a great artist, looking back. Heather McCrae, I admire her work. She's a great friend.
And do you consider yourself a role model?
I think so. I wish I had taught. I think I have a lot to offer. I wish I had taught, because I had
Not too late, Nancy.
Not too late. Well, I had great training, and I'd like to pass that on. Something I've never done. I'd like to pass that on.
And if you could go back and you could look at, all these different areas of your life and piecing them all together, before we talk about the positive, let's go back for just a moment and talk about that period in the mid 80s when the AIDS crisis was taking over. My memories at that time, specifically, we didn't have social media. So you didn't really hear instantly, as we do now, when someone had passed away. You would show up at the club and someone would say, I haven't seen so-and-so in a while. And then you would hear this bad news that they were no longer with us, or that they were battling this. Did you work with Hearts and Voices? I think you did. Did you?
I did. I did with a bit.
And performed at that time?
Yeah. I went to some, and we had benefits for Hearts and Voices at the club, as well as, a recurring series for Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS. We raised quite a bit of money for them over 10 years. And really, that was at the very beginning of Equity Fights AIDS, working with Tom Viola. So since I was at the club every day, every night, I pretty much was in tune with who we were losing and what was happening in those days.
And then years later, with what we went through with 9/11, and I remember how at that time the cabaret community really came together in terms of doing benefits. The Christmas after that, we went to firehouses and sang.
Yes, wasn't that? Yeah.
Did you do that as well?
Yes, I was with you on that.
Yes, that's right. We had such a great time doing that.
Yeah.
I feel, and this is just me personally, I think that we've gone through so much in the past year. As someone who has been on both sides, both as an artist and running a club, which is also an art, how do you feel, or how do you see the clubs coming back after what we've been through?
Since we're so small and so tight together, we may be the last thing to come back, sadly. I'm not sure. First, we have to be comfortable. The audience has to be comfortable. So when will that happen? This week, New York City is very high risk. Last week, it was extremely high risk. We'll just follow this along, because until people are comfortable sitting, sharing an armrest in a theater, sitting in a small club, until the audience is comfortable, we won't be back fully. I see, so many people online, and that's not something I feel like I'll do, but
You're talking about the performances, the photographs that you've seen from certain performers online?
Yes. Well,
yes.
Performance.
Yes. I totally agree with you on this. I think it's too soon, personally. And I am just as anxious as anyone to be seeing my fellow artist on the stage and being there myself. But I'm just not. I have not even been in Manhattan, Nancy, since March 10th of last year.
Amazing. Well, we're the same way. We go to the park, The other night we had a small group celebration for Steve's birthday.
Oh, happy birthday, Steve.
Yeah, down in Riverside Park. Other than that, we've been isolated.
Well, I asked earlier about, keeping it all together with Steve. Do you live in a large apartment, a smaller apartment? Do you each have the opportunity to go off and be separate from each other from time to time?
Well, we time share the living room. I wake up early. He sleeps late. I have the living room in the morning. He has it at night. That's about how we manage. It's so funny. We live in a 1-bedroom apartment on Manhattan's Upper West Side. We have for many, many, many years together, and Richard, it's fine.
Yes.
It's all we need.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I'll go into the bedroom and Steve will say, "Where have you been?"
Which is a good thing. That's a very good thing.
It is a good thing. It's a great thing. It really is.
And how when you were running a club, was it 24/7 completely, or were there ever moments where you were able to just shut it down? I see some people who they practically live in the clubs that they are running now, and that's just from the booking part of it,
right? Just the bookers, yeah.
You were, running a club like that. How were you able to get away from it from time to time, or were you?
No, I wasn't. No, there was no getting away from it. I had invested a good chunk of change in the club, and I felt responsible. There was no getting away. It was not 24/7, but 16, hours a day. Yeah. So I loved it.
Now, you've had the luxury of performing both in smaller venues and the larger venues.
Yeah.
Do you have a preference, or is it just a different frame of mind with each one?
Well, the difference is minimal, really, isn't it? I mean, the work you do. If you're on Broadway, you have a body mic. In a small club, you sometimes get to see faces, not always. You don't always get to see faces.
That's another aspect that when I am, and this about me, I want to see the faces in the audience. I always say to lighting designers, I am your worst nightmare. And then they look at me like with dread, and I go, because it's not about me. I want to see the audience. I want to see the faces. I can't imagine being on stage and looking out and seeing a sea of masks. I want to see the smiles.
Oh, Lord. Oh, God.
So I just can't even imagine.
No. How can we do that? We'll see.
Now, with everything that you've done, is there anything that you haven't done that you mentioned earlier, teaching, which I think should happen. But are there areas of your career or personal life of things that you haven't done that you really hope to accomplish at some point?
Hope to accomplish? Well, you just changed my train of thought. Because there's a big difference between what I want, what I had wished for. Like, darn, I wish I'd done a Sondheim show. Wouldn't that have been great? I'm 73 years old, Richard.
73 years young.
Yes, I feel like I have a lot that I have the energy to do a lot once we can get out there and be with each other again. But specifically, nothing's coming to mind specifically. I'd love to do a TV show, but I've never gone that way. So
you've never pursued that end of the business, the film either, or
no, not at all. No.
Now you still have family in Charlotte?
My brother and his wife, Jim and Chris, live in Charlotte, so I get down there. And this summer, I'll be able, in August, we're finally branching out, going to Chautauqua, New York. They have a home up there as well as Charlotte, and we'll have some time with them at the Chautauqua Institution, which is a phenomenal place that we've been able to visit up there.
Now, you talked earlier, I mean, when I was a kid, the Charlotte Coliseum opened. And then a few years later, there was Carowinds that opened.
Oh, yeah.
There weren't a lot of opportunities. Just this past week, I interviewed Tom Gannon. Do you know Tom? He is with the Belk Performing Arts Center, and he is in charge. I didn't realize this. There are 6 major performing arts venues in Charlotte, North Carolina now. And on an average year, they present up to 1,000 performers and acts, of course. Everything, of course, was shut down this past year. Everything is on hold, moving forward. But can you imagine? I mean, that this place that both you as children now is considered a hub as far as performing arts centers?
It's fantastic. Wonderful. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you had a lot of things on your plate planned for this past year before everything happened. What was on your calendar when everything shut down last year?
Well, the first was, the Bistro Awards was March 9th. And Mark and I were booked in London for March 13th.
Wow.
At the Pheasantry. And so we missed that. And that was a big disappointment. I was so thrilled to be going to London with Mark. The other night, I told you we had a little celebration. I went and got out this cashmere shawl that I was going to wear down to the river, and it was all packed in tissue paper and iron. I don't remember doing that. Then I remembered, that was going to London, So we had that. And then Mark and I were booked at Lynn University for March 31st last month. And that's been postponed a year. So we're still hoping that booking comes through.
And is this your Johnny Mercer show?
Yes.
And are you going to record it? I hope.
Possibly. We haven't thought about it, but we have to add a half hour to that show for Lynn University. They want 90 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not like you can't find any material from Johnny Mercer to put in the show. So, I want to, we're going to wrap everything up. I am such a fan of your work, Nancy. I've said this to you before, and I'm not just saying this because you're here. You have this ability with every lyric to touch every person in the audience when you sing. And you just, I'm seeing some of the comments on the side here, and Sydney says, you are a role model, very encouraging. There are just so many people that you have touched over the years. And I want to celebrate your body of worth and what it is you bring to the table. Once again, everybody, I want to thank you all for being here today. If you enjoyed the show, and I hope you did, please hit the like button on the video itself. That helps us with the analytics. Share it with your friends. Let everyone know about this. And I always end every show by asking everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list, and the second name that pops up, pick up the phone and call that person. Not an email, not a text message, not a private message. Just a few months ago, I interviewed this guy, Rick Lertzman, and him and his wife were sitting on their sofa watching television 2 nights ago. I don't want to end on a morbid note, but he just closed his eyes and died. And he had health issues, but as I said, you never know what someone else is going through. As our dear friend David Friedman says, we're all in this together, but we're not in the same boat. Reach out to your friends. That's the big lesson that I want to leave everyone with. And Nancy, I want to give you the final word. Anything that you want to say about anything that we talked about today that you want to build upon, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had, or just any message that you want to put out to everyone now. And again, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Richard. This has been delightful. I've admired what you do with other people, and thank you for making it enjoyable and easy. And when this is all over, we'll get together. Absolutely.
And we did have brunch together. Was it 2 weeks before everything shut down last year?
Right, at Sarah Beth. We did. We'll do it again. We'll do it.
Yes.
We'll do it again.
And give my
darling.
Thank you so much. Goodbye, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.